Hi, Jim Sylvia here, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the John Brown timeline that I've been working on. I posted a video a little while ago saying that I was going to start posting a little more, talking about it in preparation for the book that we have coming out at the Harpers Ferry Park Association. We're associated with the National Park in Harpers Ferry, and we feel like this is going to be an important book in um, the work that's been done on John Brown over the years. We've got some new research that we think will open some people's eyes, and I'd like to start talking about that to maybe get some discussions going, and of course, maybe get a little interest in the book. Um, you can kind of see behind me, I've got a large version of the timeline. And I do this because when I'm down at the fort in Harpers Ferry, it makes a presentation and it makes people stop and take a look. So let me get this a little closer for you so you can not necessarily see me, but see the timeline. And um, it's essentially the timeline minute by minute. Um, and it just goes through everything that happened during the raid in as much detail as we can get or that we know. I've put in about anywhere from 6 to 8,000 hours worth of work and research on this project over the last 5 years, and I think we've got a pretty good timeline that is going to open some people's eyes. Now, I've got the beginning of the timeline here, and what I hope that this is going to show is that this is not the linear event that we're told in the history books and in textbooks. We get a very linear story of John Brown came to Harper's Ferry with 21 men and tried to free the slaves. However, they were trapped inside the engine house by 90 Marines, and Robert E. Lee captured John Brown, and that was the end of the story. Well, it's a little more complicated than that, a little more involved than that. What people don't realize is that in addition to 90 Marines, 21 Raiders, and John Brown, there were also 2,000 townspeople who were involved. There were about 750 local militia that were involved. There were politicians from Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., Virginia, Maryland who were involved. The B&O Railroad was a major contributor to the effort to get people to and from Harpers Ferry during this effort. So it's a lot more than people understand, and that's what this timeline is going to bring out. What we're going to try to do with what we've done with the timeline and what we're going to try to do in more detail in the book is bring some of these stories to life. Talk about some of those experiences of the people, of the militiamen and what was going on with them. And it's really fascinating because every time I turn a new page of a book, turn a corner, physically walk through the town to where these things happened and map off these distances, um, I find out something new and exciting that I hadn't understood before, and we're trying to bring that to people now. So, what we see behind us here is essentially, if you come down to here, it's about 5 hours worth of the raid. So, this entire timeline is about 24 feet long, and it's 36 hours of the raid, and it encompasses anyone and everything who was involved. The color coding is for different parts of town. So if you want to follow the timeline and you don't have the time, or you have ADD and you can't read it line by line, what you can do is figure out what part of town you're interested in, or maybe you know where a certain raider was stationed during the raid. You can figure out what color goes with that part of town and then just follow that color. So we've got, green, which is over at the Rifle Works down on the Shenandoah. You've got purple, which is everything that happened on the other side of the Potomac River. So I've tried to break it down and slice it and dice it in different ways that I think people will connect to it. So, if you've got an ancestor maybe that was stationed at the Rifle Works, you can focus on the Rifle Works. If you want to just follow John Brown, then you can follow basically everything that's in white is what's happening right inside the armory proper. So you can follow John Brown inside the armory. So we're looking at this very differently than most scholars have looked at it in the past. Typically, it's been the high points, the key points of the raid have been highlighted, have been outlined, and then everything in between was just kind of floating by, on the Shenandoah or on the Potomac. What I tried to do was dig into all those in between times to figure out what else was going on and how do we continue the story. And I have a separate timeline that just follows the raiders. So this follows everybody. And I did another timeline that just follows the raiders so that when we tell the story, we lose each of those individual 22 men and where they are and where their individual 36-hour journey takes them. This timeline will allow you to see for each one of those men where they were for all 36 hours of the raid. And it helps people understand what each of these men went through, how they traveled, what their individual journey was when they were at Harper's Ferry. So I think I'm going to wrap up for today. Just a little quick video, give you a little bit of a tidbit into what's here. And I think what I'll try to do as I post more videos, I'll get into some of those more specific details. I think what I'll do next time is I'll talk about a gentleman who was on the train and coming into town at about 1:30 in the morning, 1:25 in the morning, and what he saw. And for me, that's the epitome of the story that people don't see, people haven't seen for 160 some odd years. So thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and tune in again and we'll piece a little bit more of this schedule together. Thanks, have a great night.